When I look back on that summer, I can still feel the weight of decisions that reshaped my life. My name is Rachel, and for years I had been living in what many people would call a picture-perfect marriage. My husband, Daniel, was a reliable man, steady and calm, the kind of person who paid bills on time, kept his promises, and always reminded me to take the car in for oil changes. To the outside world, we looked like the perfect couple. But behind closed doors, things were different. Daniel had grown distant. He worked long hours, and when he came home, he buried himself in paperwork or the television. I used to try and talk to him, to reach for him, to make him laugh the way I once did, but it was as though the spark had been extinguished. He wasn't cruel, he wasn't unfaithful, he simply wasn't there anymore in the way I needed him. I had become a shadow in my own marriage, and loneliness was eating away at me. It was during this vulnerable stage of my life that I met Michael. He was a colleague at a community project I volunteered for, charming and attentive in a way that immediately caught me off guard. He wasn't just polite, he noticed me. He asked how my day was going and genuinely seemed to care about the answer. He'd compliment my ideas, laugh at my jokes, and linger just long enough in conversation that I could feel something stir in me I thought I had lost forever. The attention was intoxicating. At first, I resisted. I told myself it was just harmless attraction, that I could appreciate him without crossing a line. But as weeks passed, we exchanged more than just polite conversation. Soon, we were sending texts late into the night, sharing thoughts we couldn't voice to anyone else. He told me about his failed marriage, about his regrets, about how he longed for a genuine connection. I told him about my loneliness, about how Daniel had grown so cold, about how invisible I felt in my own home. The day came when Michael invited me to his house. He lived in a quiet neighborhood, a modest home that looked warm and lived in. I remember standing outside his door, heart pounding in my chest, the weight of what I was about to do pressing on me. When he opened the door, he greeted me with that familiar smile that always made me feel wanted. For a moment, I forgot everything else, my husband, my guilt, my fear. I stepped inside, crossing a boundary I swore I'd never cross. But the night did not unfold the way I expected. Michael excused himself to take a phone call just minutes after I arrived. I sat nervously in the living room, fiddling with my hands, rehearsing excuses in case I lost my courage and decided to leave. That was when someone else walked in, his son. His name was Ethan. Tall, confident, with a presence that immediately filled the room. He looked to be in his early 20s, maybe a college student. I had seen him in passing once before, but never spoken to him. That night, however, circumstances forced us into an awkward introduction. He smiled politely, but there was something in his eyes, something knowing, as though he could read the situation better than I wanted him to. "You're one of my dad's friends?" he asked, his tone careful but loaded. The question sent a shiver through me. I stammered out a reply, trying to frame myself as nothing more than a casual acquaintance, but Ethan wasn't fooled. He studied me in silence for a moment that felt like an eternity. His smirk told me he had already pieced together more than I wanted him to. Michael returned soon after, his call finally ending, and the tension in the room became palpable. Ethan excused himself, but not before giving me one last look that made me feel exposed. I tried to ignore it, tried to focus on Michael, on why I was there, but my mind kept circling back to Ethan's expression. Over the next few weeks, I saw Michael again, but it was always complicated. Ethan was around more often than not, and though he never said anything outright, his presence was unsettling. He'd watch me with a mix of curiosity and judgment, as though daring me to admit what I was doing. At times, I felt as though he was protecting his father, silently warning me not to play with his heart. At other times, I sensed something else, something that hinted at his own conflicted emotions. The real turning point came one evening when I returned to Michael's house, only to find that he had been called away unexpectedly. He texted me apologetically, saying he wouldn't be back for a while, but I could wait inside if I wanted. Ethan was there, and when he opened the door, his eyes lit up with recognition. "You're here for my dad?" he asked. I nodded, explaining the situation, but instead of leaving me to wait in silence, he invited me in. At first, the conversation was light: college, work, small talk. But gradually, it grew heavier. He asked me why someone like me, a woman who looked like she had everything, would get involved with someone already burdened by life's complications. His words cut deeper than he probably intended, but they also forced me to reflect. "Do you even know what you're risking?" he asked softly. "Your marriage? My dad's trust? Your own peace of mind?" For the first time, I felt the full weight of my choices. Hearing it come from Ethan, someone younger, someone who should have been on the sidelines of the story, made me realize how messy things had become. I wasn't just hurting myself, I was dragging others into my mistakes. Ethan didn't condemn me completely, though. His voice softened, and he admitted he understood what loneliness could drive people to do. He confessed that he had seen his father's pain after his divorce, and he worried I would only make things harder for him. His words were raw, honest, and filled with a kind of wisdom that surprised me. That night, I left Michael's house without seeing him. I went home and sat alone in the dark, replaying Ethan's words over and over. For the first time, I questioned not just my marriage, but also the person I was becoming. I had sought comfort in Michael, but what I had found instead was a mirror held up by a son, forcing me to see myself in a way I couldn't ignore. In the weeks that followed, I pulled away from Michael. Our texts grew less frequent, and eventually, they stopped altogether. I didn't give him a dramatic explanation. I simply faded out of his life. But the truth is, Ethan's intervention had saved me from sinking deeper into a situation I wasn't prepared for. Daniel and I still had our struggles, but I began to approach them differently. Instead of seeking what I lacked elsewhere, I tried to confront it head-on. I suggested counseling, opened up about my feelings, and slowly, Daniel started opening up too. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't instant, but it was real. Looking back, I realize now that Ethan changed the course of my life that summer. He didn't manipulate me or expose me. He simply held a mirror to my choices and reminded me of the consequences. His father may never know how close I came to crossing a line I could never take back, but I'll always remember the night I went to his house, and his son had other plans. Not plans of betrayal, not plans of temptation, but plans of honesty, plans that forced me to face myself before it was too late. And that is the truth of my story.